If you've been watching my show for any length of time, you may be getting tired of me debunking the climate alarmist narrative. But it's extremely important. Climate alarmism is the main tool of the globalists to convince people that humans are a disease, and that we must be controlled before we destroy the planet. The British Met Office has announced that 2023 was the hottest year on record since 1850. Others have gone further, claiming it was the hottest for 125,000 years. The very idea that there is an average temperature for the globe is absurd, a meaningless concept. Even if there was, it could not be accurately measured to the hundredths of a degree claimed. Apart from anything else, there were very few temperature measurements outside Europe and the US prior to the early 20th century to enable comparisons to be made. The best data we have comes from satellites, which show that 2023 was the hottest year since records started in 1979, but only 0.12 degrees Celsius higher than in 2016. One of the main reasons for last year's spike, which the media and government agencies have avoided mentioning, is the Hunga Tonga volcano eruption 2 years ago. Volcanoes usually cool the world because of the plume of ash and other particles they eject. However, Hunga Tonga started as an undersea eruption, so the amount of ash was relatively small. What it did send skyward was a massive plume of water vapor, which reached the stratosphere, where it remains, and will do so for several more years. 50 times more potent than CO2, water vapor is by far the most potent of greenhouse gases, and scientists believe that Hunga Tonga was responsible for a large chunk of last year's warming. But claims that it was the hottest year for the last 100,000 years or so simply don't stack up against the evidence. For decades, proper climate scientists, such as H. Lamb, have known that the early to mid-Holocene was much warmer than now. This is the period from the end of the last ice age up to about 3000 BC. They even gave it a name, the Holocene Optimum, because the warmer climate was a boon for civilization. They say the same about other warm periods since, such as Roman times and the Middle Ages. The evidence for this is widespread, powerful, and undeniable. Above all, it does not rely on dodgy computer models and unreliable proxies. Ice cores, for instance, tell us a lot about past temperatures, and the ones in Greenland clearly show the Holocene Optimum and also indicate that the Little Ice Age, which ended in the 19th century, was the coldest era since the last ice age. All sorts of other evidence from around the Arctic, such as glaciers and remains of forests on frozen tundra that was previously covered with glaciers, support the evidence from ice cores. Elsewhere, tree line studies from the Rockies, European Alps, Carpathians, Japan, New Guinea, Australia, New Zealand, East Africa, and the Andes show that trees used to grow at much higher altitudes than they do now. Powerful evidence of a much warmer climate. And as glaciers from Alaska to Patagonia and the Alps to Iceland retreat, we are now finding remains of trees dating back to the Middle Ages and the Roman era. Denmark's leading glaciologist, Professor Jorgen Petter Steffensen, summed it up best in this recent video.
This ice is from the Viking Age, around the year 1000, also called the medieval warm period. We believe that in Greenland, the medieval warm period was about 1.5 degrees warmer on average than today. When we remove or drill the ice core, we leave a hole, and we insert a thermometer in the hole. We are able to map out the temperature through the 3-kilometer ice sheet. Now that temperature, if we do it precisely enough, a thousandth of a degree accuracy, then the ice has not forgotten how cold or warm it was on the surface at the time the snow fell. So, using those temperatures, we have been able to reconstruct the temperatures of the last 10,000 years. Here we have our picture of the temperature reconstructions that we have from Greenland in a graphical form. And if we go back along this axis, it's going back in time. This is the last 8,000 years we have plotted here. On this axis we have the temperatures at the sites in Greenland, and we can see that if we go back from now about 4,000 years ago, we would have temperatures up here for about 4,000 years that were 2.5 degrees warmer on average than today. Now and then around 1875 we have the lowest point in the last 8,000 years right here, and that matches exactly the time when meteorological observations started.
The climate alarmists tell us that 2 degrees of warming will destroy all life on Earth. But Dr. Stephenson just showed us that up to 4,000 years ago, temperatures were 2 degrees warmer. This leaves the climate alarmists with a conundrum. Either they have to admit that 2 degrees of warming would actually be good for the planet, or they have to believe that all life on Earth started about 4,000 years ago.